Okay, guys, so welcome. Yeah, I'll hand over to you, Dom.
Perfect. We're off. So first and foremost, thank you everyone for giving up an hour, and thank you to Will and Logan in particular, who are going to be sharing some of their experience. For those who don't know, my name's Dom. Andy's on the call as well. We've been doing quite a bit of work for the Southeast in the background over the last year, and effectively just trying to put us in the best position to strengthen the region.
Just gone on mute, Dom.
You're on mute. Mate, Andy, I'm literally mid-flow there. Mate, honestly. I was in such a flow.
All right. Just to throw you up. You have to start again from the beginning so we can reset the video now.
Oh, okay. Well, otherwise I'm going to look stupid. So in essence, what we're trying to do is just put in a bit of change to try and strengthen the region across the board. So first and foremost, this as an entity is a webinar. Hopefully will just be Will and Logan sharing a bit of their experience from a coaching point of view. Hopefully take something from it. I've got a few questions to guide us through, but it should take about 45 minutes, depending on how long Logan talks for. And then after that, we'll open up for some Q&A if anyone has any. Otherwise, we'll go back to enjoying our Thursday night. I think it's Thursday. So yeah, solid. Any questions, chuck them in the chat, and then we'll try and either answer them straight away or we'll come to them at the end. One of the two. Perfect. So Logan, I'll jump over to you straight away, mate. So with your coaching, just wondering if you could kind of outline your philosophy towards coaching, how you approach your teams, and then whether that's going to change coming off the back of COVID.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Dom. Hi, everyone. So I think for me, there's a couple of things that I think of when I think of my philosophy to coaching. I think number one, it's sort of trying to get the vision right for what we're trying to achieve. And you know, the vision for me can either be a goal or a specific performance or things like that. So for me, if we're going to start coaching and I'm going to get involved with coaching people, we need to know what those objectives are as a team and what we're trying to achieve. Because if we're just going to turn up without any mission or goals or anything like that, it's just going to be a bit of a not really no value added there as well. And I think the second one for me is sort of helping people develop themselves, adapt to change and all that kind of thing. But it's just not on the touch field, but there is also trying to enhance people's other areas. So, you know, one thing that for me, we always go about coaching is about developing people's skills. But for me, it's leadership skills, communication skills, being able to enhance their teamwork. You know, there's all those other things that you need to consider when you're actually coaching as well. So that to me is a big one. And I think the other philosophy, the other part of the philosophy is really about providing a safe, fun environment where people can learn at their own way, they can learn at their own pace, and obviously you can adapt that to different learning styles as well. So I'll probably touch on this a little bit later, but everyone does learn in different ways. So it is having to be very adaptable to how you coach people, and sometimes you might have to be individualistic. Sometimes you can do it as a group, but you will have to look at that as well. I think going on to the second part of the question, Dom, I think one thing for me is that I do have a certain way in terms of trying to coach teams, but I think after the COVID, it's really having to adapt in terms of what we're going to expect. So I think we're going to have to adapt quite quickly in terms of, you know, resetting goals and what do people actually want to achieve. And I think one thing for me, it's we're going to have a look at the philosophy of being patient with development, because some people haven't done anything for 12 months and they just want to come back into it and do what they were doing previously as well. So I think one thing that I really have to look at in terms of coaching coming back from the last 12 months is showing patience and empathy to how people have coped with what they have been doing or what they haven't been doing over the last 12 months. That to me is a real big one for me. And also, I think the other things that we need to consider is really about the coaching environment. So it will differ depending on what Boris keeps saying. That to me is a critical one. So how do people travel to the training sessions? How do they interact at training sessions? You know, the old, oh, how you doing, hugs, and all that loving stuff. We may not be able to do that. So one thing for me, I know I really encourage teamwork, high-fiving and all that type of stuff. How do we actually manage all that? It's going to be quite interesting. So I think, it's a big learning time for everyone.
Yeah, mate, 100% agree. That's I've already just written down about 4 or 5 other questions off the back of that, but I'm sure we'll get to that as we come down.
Yeah.
But I'll come to you first before that. Same question to you, mate. Philosophy, and then will it change off the back of COVID?
Yeah, so I think just picking up on what Jason's sort of last couple of points about the adaptations to COVID, I think the big thing that I'm envisaging changing is, I guess, doing more stuff remotely and doing more stuff online and virtually. And I know that obviously people have joined a lot of Zoom calls, spent a lot of their evenings learning various different things, but I think there's massive value in that was probably overlooked before. And I think previously we'd sort of, go through the game plan at a physical session, we'd walk through it, talk through it, run through it, and do all of the learning at training. Whereas I think something that I'll probably try and move to and adapt to is bringing that learning outside of the training session and sending more stuff around on video or getting people on a call and sort of saying, this is how we want to play the game, this is how we want to approach it, and doing more stuff, like I said, remotely and virtually. In terms of philosophy, I think me and Jason probably have quite a similar approach to that in terms of good people make good players, and you want to build a team of people who are there for each other and there for a common goal, which again goes to Jason's point about sort of setting that vision and that mission really early, so it's really clear what you are trying to achieve, and then building the steps to that to make a real clear sort of progression of, we're going to do this, then this, then this, and that's going to put us in the best position to win this tournament, get to this level, get these players selected, whatever that sort of overall goal is. And then I think the big thing for me is also about sort of empowering players to make decisions. And I think touch in general is moving away from really, really distinct, obvious patterns where it's this happens, then this happens, then this happens, to I do this and then my options are A, B, and C. And if I pick the right one, that then goes on to the next decision, which again has 3 parts to it. And it's, for me, I really want players who can look up, identify that they're at that decision point, and then make the correct one and adapt on the back of it, rather than just sort of rigidly following a pattern or a structure or whatever words you want to use for it.
Yeah, because it makes you unpredictable then, right? If you have a system, it can be broken down, but if people make decisions there and then you can never really be predictable. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Good starting insight. I wanted to ask Jason, I'll come back to you just off the back of what you said, particularly with people's different learning styles and how you tend to like having teams with lots of high fives. I've always played in teams similar to that. I found that really important. But how are you then going to approach implementing that into your team as we come back from COVID? So like, how are you going to like make players feel safe and feel part of a team where some of the traditional methods might not be as useful?
Yeah, I think like what Will said, I think we have to look at different tools. Like everyone's used to this type of setting these days, so it's probably having these formal catch-ups, but not make them too lengthy, because I think everyone, I know myself that I try to cut down these visual calls in the workplace. Anything over 40 minutes, you just start losing people. And I've seen people fall asleep. It's quite embarrassing. So it's quite important that you do get people to utilize different tools, and there's nothing wrong with the old phone call as well. So just to see how people are traveling as well. So I think for me, I think it's setting the scene much earlier, rather than just getting everyone to turn up somewhere and then going, oh, okay, cool. Now this is what the objective of what we're trying to do and all that type of stuff. So I think for me, it's the preparation beforehand is going to be quite critical. So I know one thing that I started trying to do for the 35s a bit more of is, okay, we've got a lesson plan and doing all that, but it's actually catching up, 1 or 2 weeks before that important camp and going, okay, does everyone know what we're doing? Because we want things to be like clockwork, and if people got questions and things like that. So for me, I think it's all about preparation and people all being on the same page when they do get there, understand their roles and responsibilities and the do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
I think going on to that, I think in terms of that sort of the atmosphere and the environment you're trying to create, especially at sort of higher level touch where it's a team that comes together for a specific tournament, getting like a group of leaders or more experienced players on side and sort of laying out your vision to them first to make sure that they agree with it and think it's achievable, and they can sort of drive those, not necessarily standards, but that sort of, they can be the real drivers of your atmosphere and your environment, and they can sort of be the ones that at the first training session go and say hello to everyone, a lot of high fives, a lot of smiles, really nice like energy, and then people will feed off that because energy breeds energy, rather than sort of going, okay, we're all going to rock up and see how it goes. If you can sort of plant a few people who you know have the same ideas as you and the same vision as you, they can then sort of bring that energy in, and it feels a lot more natural and organic.
Sam, do you tend to, have you got any examples of how you've done that so far, or is this something which is in the pipeline to bring back?
Can I just probably, I think it was last year when we were doing the Sharks and Taipan sort of opens training, and I think the first couple, obviously some people there were a bit nervous coming back, so we said, yeah, fair enough. But for me, I think I got down there, we discussed exactly what would be required beforehand, but I got down there and I just sort of set up the drills in advance and just sort of go, okay, cool, let's everyone stay here, we do this, we do that, so we just get everyone sort of comfortable. So for me, I think it was just people knew what was going to be happening beforehand, and then I sort of set up the training area so people knew where they would be and what they would have to do, so it's not just a collation of people straight away all into the same spot as well. So it's things like that. Well, it was probably a good example, and then gradually when you start doing the same, people get used to it and create the habits. So I think after the third week, everyone knew what we were doing, and then they just kept feeding back to me. So it was quite an open loop like that.
Yeah, brilliant. And I guess it puts that real importance on then how well you're going to communicate, and then doing it early and managing expectations, right? And what feedback is actually what a brilliant silo is going to be the next question off the back of sort of the list of questions. So two-way communication, really important. But Will, I'll come to you on this one, and just a bit more of sort of a direct question. How has feedback changed for you as a coach, and how's it changed over your coaching career, I guess, and maybe some of the things you learned at London Irish, not Harlequins, London Irish. Don't know what type of that was on the advertising. If there's any diehard Quins fans, then they're going to start dropping off now.
Probably start leaving the call.
40 minutes in, I'm a Quins fan, I'm out. But no, sorry, how has the feedback kind of mechanism changed for you?
I think it's interesting because I think at the start of my sort of, when I was first involved in touch, because I was very much still learning, and also it's probably a reflection on like what good coaching practice looked like at the time. It was really autocratic and really direct, and it was just go and do this, go and do that. You did this wrong, you needed to do this. And then sort of as I started coaching a bit more, and I think the sort of narrative around what good coaching practice looked like changed a bit. It sort of got into this like, everything should be a question. And if you want to instill learning, you need to ask a question and get a response and get the player to think about it. And it's something that I struggled with a lot at the start, because I thought I couldn't ever tell someone something. I thought I always had to question them. And then I sort of, it's like, I'll ask an open question, don't ask a direct question. Sort of trying really hard to do that. And then basically found that I'd sort of asked this really open question, and then a lot of people would look at me blankly, or the player I was trying to give feedback to would look at me blankly. I'd be like, okay, I haven't asked the right question there. So I think from my personal experience, it's changed from being very direct to very questioning, and now the sort of balance of both, where there's times where you really need to ask questions because you really need to know that the player understands it and they've got to that solution by themselves. Because then at the end of the day, sport is like problem solving, and there's a solution to it, and you get to that solution. So I think I always thought, have to ask questions. It'll improve their depth of learning. Whereas now I think it's at a point where I understand the right time to ask a question and the right time to sort of just be direct and sort of tell. And then also a little bit, as sort of Jason was saying about different people's learning styles, some people just want to be told, and some people want to ask the questions and go through the whole thing. And again, there's a bit of a time thing there. Some people at training, they want to maximize training, so they just want to be told to get it right. But then away from the session, they'll be messaging you or calling you going, so can I ask about this? Or let's have a conversation about that. And then you sort of flip it back to them and go, what do you think? Like, how would you have done that differently? What were you seeing here? And sort of ask those open questions there.
Yeah, having a two-way conversation. So follow-up questions to that, Will. When's the right time to be direct and in your eyes, and the right time to ask questions? Is that a question that can't be answered?
No, I think very generally during a game, I will be much more direct and much more tell, because there's less time to sort of have a really long conversation. People's heart rates are up. I think people just need the information quickly, concisely, and know exactly what the information is. And I think as a player, I sometimes find it frustrating during a game if the coach sort of goes, "Oh, what did you see there?" I'm like, honestly, I didn't see anything. Or I can't be bothered to go down this rabbit hole of the possible things I could have seen. I just want you to tell me what I should have seen and where I should have been looking for it, and then how I should have made my decision. So I think generally game time is much more direct, and then training is much more conversational, and sort of chatty and questioning. But then I think there's also, like I said before, a bit of an element of that in terms of whether you're addressing a group, whether you're addressing an individual, and also that individual's personality, learning style, how they like to receive information.
Yeah, 100%. I've got a couple of things in the chat from Dale saying it's good to get the players to ask questions as well. And I guess that's part of the conversation, right? And that's, yeah, I completely agree. And then Andy going picking up on individual versus group as a key point to consider. Logan, coming back to you, mate, because I know you said in your first sort of opening statement that people have different learning styles and different ways of approaching the game. How much do you adapt your coaching based on that? And then how much, I guess, do you put value on feedback, and how do you give that? Sorry, 3 questions in one.
No, that's all right. Yeah, I was going to comment on that. No. So I probably sort of take a bit of my
Logan, I think you're quite quiet, Logan. I think your earphones might have unplugged, mate.
Sorry, is that better?
Oh, there we go, Brittany.
Cool. Sorry, guys. No, I was just thinking. So for me, I think I sort of try to take a bit of some of the corporate stuff that I do, obviously as well. But for me, I think it's about, I don't know if everyone's heard of disc profiling before. That to me is a very simple way to identify the personality of your teams. And once you know that, then you can obviously use some of the techniques that Will's been talking about in different ways. So, if you have your really strong personalities, your dominant people, they just want quick things straight away and just tell them how it is. I know Will's a dominant person because that's the way he likes feedback. And it's not a big storytelling scenario. Then you're going to get people that are sort of your compliant kind of people. These people want to be structured, but they want facts. So when you say, "Oh, you didn't do that right," they go, "Okay, why didn't I do it right? Give me some data, give me this, give me that." Those type of people. So you need to sort of understand that. And then you've got other people that just need a pat on the back and say, "Yeah, you're doing this, but let's just talk about it." And then there's other people that just, want to sort of have that interaction and just want to be told in front of people. So you've got a whole lot of different type of personalities there that you've got to try and mix and match. So it is a balancing job there for me. And I think I think Will sort of touched on this much earlier as well. For me, it's how you can utilize your senior leadership group in terms of giving feedback as well. Okay, so there's nothing better than a bit of peer feedback. So I know one thing that I did for the 35s was I got everyone to outline exactly what personality trait they were. And then we went through, okay, how do you give feedback to each other? And for me, that was quite interesting because we saw who sort of needs the arm around each other after the game, and who gets down on themselves quite quickly and all that type of stuff as well. So that to me is quite critical. So it's understanding the players, but the players or your squad members understanding each other how to give feedback as well, because there's nothing worse than having someone dominant that will just go to you, go, "Oh, that was bad," and you go, "Well, why?" and all that. So that to me is quite evident as well. And the other thing that I think we were having the same conversation at Galaxy the other week as well. For me, you've got to make your feedback relevant as well. So for me, if you've got a player who is no good at doing a particular task or is not going to be responsible for running quickies, okay, do not give them feedback if they're just mucking around in a training session doing quickies. Do not give them feedback about that, because there's no point, because that's not their role and responsibility. So really got to give the feedback on in terms of what you're actually giving that, what's that person's role in the team as well. So, you know, if mainly their role is a defensive player, okay, a majority of their feedback should be on their defense. Okay, so I think that to me is a really big one as well. And I know a lot of coaches starting to do this. Video says 1,000 words as well, and I know I'm guilty of this as well. But it's not just video games; it's video training sessions. To me, that's a big one, and it's video and skills sessions as well. So you can start seeing the attitude, and you know, I just say this: if you have a crap warm up, you're going to have a crap game. If you're going to have a crap warm up, you're going to have a crap training session. So it's monitoring all that throughout, so you can actually start feeding back to the group on particular things, but then feeding back to individuals as well. I've got probably a few more points on that, but yeah, but that's enough for the time being.
Yeah, that's webinar number 2, mate. No, that's thanks. That's really insightful. And actually, I'll just chat. This is completely off topic. Oh, this is a bit rogue, but Will, coming back to you. Obviously, for those who didn't know, Will was an analyst for London Irish first team and has been for a number of years, although he has just moved role. But Will, from your time working in professional rugby in the Premiership, is there anything that you took particularly from the video feedback which you are now wanting to implement in touch or have already started implementing?
I think just sort of what Jason was saying there about just sort of the volume of it. And I think we were very fortunate being in a professional environment that we were there to film training and to give that feedback to the coaches and to the players. So we could film everything, and we could film it from multiple different perspectives and different angles and flip between them very easily to sort of go, okay, this is what it looks like close in, but if you look at the wider view, you can see X, Y, Z. And I don't think touch at the moment is fortunately in a position where we've got enough people in being able to give enough time to sort of go through and do the things that we were doing there. But I think the big thing, and sort of going back to what Jason was saying there about sort of like attitude and sort of approach to training, so like the club had, well, the first team squad set sort of 3 or 4 like really important values to them. And basically, as part of our review of a game on a Monday, it wouldn't just be, here are the technical things, here are the tactical things. They'd also go, okay, can we clip 3 or 4 things that relate to our values as a squad and what we want to achieve and what we think our standards are, to sort of go, like, call it out in front of the whole squad and go, one of our values is being relentless. And here's a clip of this player and he makes 5 tackles in a row, just gets up, keeps going, and he's the first person on the kick chase after that, and that kind of thing. So I think that's something that is very interesting that I'd kind of like to explore, is sort of using video not just for technical and tactical analysis, but also sort of behavioural and attitude analysis. And then I think, going back to what Jason said, just being able to cut it up and send individual clips to individual players and sort of go, what are you seeing here? I think you could have done X, Y, Z, or let's have a discussion about this clip so that I know what you're seeing, you know what I'm seeing, and that's a really useful way of us getting on the same page.
Yeah, that's genius. And I think definitely over lockdown, everyone's kind of adapted right to being a bit more remote. So what a time to sort of bring that in and implement it.
Can I just say one thing there, Dom? And it's probably something that haven't done enough. And I know what Will's coming from. I mean, yeah, okay, we don't have all that video technology, but just simple things like having peers videoing from a phone, because the quality of the phones these days are good enough. All you have to do is sit back and go, look, this is what I picked up. And that's something, you know, very simple, and it's peer-to-peer feedback rather than coaches' feedback as well. So, you know, I've done that for a few teams, and it does help a little bit as well, rather than the coaches having to look at every video possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say,
carry on.
Just on that, obviously, so Scorp started playing our first league last night. And last week, me and Dom just put together some clips of sort of the driving pattern that we wanted to run and a bit of the line attack that we wanted to run. Just sent that to the WhatsApp group of the people that were playing, and we're like, look, we're not going to have a training session. We're not going to have time together before we play. So get your head around these clips. We'll obviously thrash it out in the first couple of games as well and get used to it. But this is what we're aiming for. So, like, go and have a look. If you've got any questions, come back to us, and then we can go that way about it.
Nice. Awesome, mate. Good example. I heard the word technical and tactical in there, and I feel like we're going to start to steer the conversation more towards the game of touch itself, because I feel it's probably a good time to kind of like steer away maybe into some gameplay. So Logan, I'm going to come to you with sort of a new conversation topic. So for those who also don't know, Jason Logan is coached down at NTLs, which is National Touch League in Australia, which is regarded as the highest sort of domestic level of competition in the world. Which team were you with? The Titans? At the time?
Titans. Yeah.
Titans. So Jason Logan is effectively coached at the highest level domestically in the world. And the NTLs have just happened. So I wanted to just almost pick your brains on where you think the game's going to in terms of like game trends, anything that you've seen, where we can take learnings maybe from some of the stronger teams in Australia and how we can implement that into sort of our system at club level around here.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and there's a few people on this call that probably know my opinion about a few things. But for me, I think the one of the big things is that we can't really get caught up in watching what Australia is happening in Australia, because as you know, Dom, a lot of these players, if you watch the NTL Men's Open finals, like there's 2 Hall of Famers in there, and there's a lot of other good kids. There's some kids playing in there that was 16 in that Men's Open final. The quality of these kids start when they're very tiny and they get given the skills and everything like that. So I think one thing for me, and I think this is just a common trend that we really need to look at, especially when we're coming back, is that we really need to go back to the fundamentals. And I think this is a huge opportunity right now with everyone coming back a bit rusty, is just going back and looking at, I don't know if people are, maybe not everyone on this call, but there's a thing called Priority 6 and Priority 10 that Australia use throughout their school system. There's nothing wrong with why we can't adapt that kind of stuff, concentrating on the dumping, concentrating on the passing. It's all those fundamentals that we need to do to be able to run a rack and pattern, to run particular line attack and things like that. That to me is a big trend. And you watch, and I'm just watching these young kids in Australia when they come into Men's Open. And for me, when I was in Australia, there were 3 17-year-olds put into that Titans team. And my God, they didn't back away at all. But because they had the skill set, they may have been just pushed around a little bit, but they had the skill set to last. And now, a couple of them are probably close to Queensland selection. So for me, it's those fundamentals, which is a big one for me. And I think another trend, and talking to a couple of the coaches down in Australia, and I think Will's already touched on this. For me, it's people talk about heads up touch here as well. For me, it's understanding the what and the how before we play heads up. So what are we doing? How do we do it? And then understanding the why. And I'll give a good example of something. I see people try to attack, that they may line attack for a particular reason, but what they'll do is try run through a whole sweeper sequence and things like that, rather than picking out a particular side of the field and running sequences on that side of the field to attack particular players, rather than just going through a sequence for things like that. So for me, it's the why, and this is a big challenge for, if you want to talk about trends of the game, it's the trends of the coaching. I think for me is a good opportunity to start explaining, why did you do that? Why don't we do this? And try those kind of a little bit different. So for me, I think that's some of the big stuff as well. So for me, I think a big trend that I want to start seeing is, start building up these skill drills and things like that, and start adapting a lot of the game scenarios to your skill drills. Just doing a boring 3-on-2. We need to start adapting that. So I'm starting to try and change my 3-on-2 skills to actually make it look like a sweeper sequence, or a 32 long sequence, and start getting that a little bit more. So those kind of trends will be a big one as well. So for me, I think that's the big one for me, is getting that. If you watch touch, I played touch back home. We were running sweepers 20 years ago. So nothing's changed. And, okay, the name of it changes, but all the sequences are the same. That MLs is something new. There was, a lot of people starting to do mid switches again. I was playing with Aborigines back home. They were doing that for fun. So these things, I wouldn't say there's, brand new stuff and things like that, brand new moves. Yes, there's some variations that we can look at, but once again, unless you have the fundamentals, those variations are going to be a bit useless. So for me, I think after coming back from 12 months of playing any decent quality, we really need to look at what we do with them and get the fundamentals right. I am from a coach's perspective, there is a bit of nervousness around people trying to do too much straight up. And let's not forget, running backwards is not a thing we do every day. So
yeah, not doing the 5K loop in reverse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 12 months not running backwards is going to be a hard thing as well. So for me, I'm not saying that there's fancy things in there in the game trends, but for me, I think, let's have a look at getting those fundamentals right. And I said to someone the other day, and they sort of laughed. I said, look at the men's 45s at the NTLs, and there's 2 Hall of Famers playing for Brisbane Cobras. And they do everything that we should be doing at at opens to everything level. It's just so simple, and they just do it right. So for me, I think we do some things. The thing from Australia is, can we watch how they do things better? Yes, we can, but I would probably watch the older grades because you can see it a bit slower as well. So I think
nice.
that's the other thing.
Solid.
So
I'll come back as I've got a couple of follow-up questions, but Will, I'll shoot straight over to you. What about yourself? Do you have anything to mirror that or anything to add?
Oh, I just completely agree with everything that Jason said. I mean, I think
good, Will, we're on the same page, mate.
Yeah, exactly. I'll come play for you again. Just need to age a little bit. I think from watching NTLs and sort of discussions that we've had, like they start so much earlier and just play so much more touch. So like, I don't know if anyone saw the interview with Dylan and Emily Hennessy, but Dylan Hennessy was just saying he just tries to play touch like every night of the week. And that's why he's so good, because he spends so much time on his skills in a competitive situation. And maybe we're sort of obviously coming off the back of 12 months. We need to do that a bit more close to start with and just practice the techniques again, dumping the ball in different ways, sort of like your bend and fend or kicking to the side, those different variations, different lengths of passing. I think defensive movements in general, just running backwards, running sideways, running at an angle, all of those things are going to be the things that take a little bit of time to sort of pick up again. And the really interesting thing that I think Jason mentioned there is something that I've sort of an idea that I've toyed around with from the way that the head coach at Irish was trying to approach the game, was that sort of in different areas of the pitch and in different situations, you have an intention, and that's what you're trying to do. So if I get the ball on my own 7-meter line, my intention is to move the ball up to the other end of the pitch. And then my actions fit into that intention to how I do that. And all of those actions are going to be underpinned by good technical skills of passing the ball, running lines, rolling the ball. And then all of your defensive actions are going to be underpinned by your movement in space, how well you can affect the touch and how you can do that differently. So that's the sort of an idea that I've been playing around with, is just sort of going to a team and going, here are the different areas of the pitch. Here are our different intentions. This is what we're trying to do. So we're all on the same page. We know exactly what we're aiming for in these different scenarios. And then I'm going to give you the actions that allow you to do that. And whether that's a sort of subset pattern that gives us a few options depending on what the defense do. But again, it's all going back to what Jason was saying. It's an intention, an action, and those actions being adaptable.
Those fundamental. Sorry, go on, Logan.
Yeah. I was just going to say, Will, that is perfect, because we talk about. I saw a couple of different rucking moves at NTLs, mainly in some of the women's grade, which I go, okay, yeah, that's something different. But like he said, once again, it's the intent. And then you look at the men's, and I remember just sitting in the sub box down there. It's they don't really have rucking patterns. They go, okay, this is the objective. Yeah, we know he does this. And I think that's one of the biggest differences on NTLs about game analysis, is they know each other back to front. And we don't get that luxury in England. We're starting to, but we don't get a luxury across internationally, do we? So it is quite difficult for that as well. But I do like that sort of the intent. We do need to go forward. How do we go forward? Well, there's a lot of ways to do that. And that's what the training is all about. It's the how.
And I guess that then helps phrase some of your questioning from before, right?
Yeah,
the
correct.
questions, what's the intent? What are the actions?
Yeah.
So follow-up question to both of you. I'll come to you first, Will. Here's a situation. We're 8 weeks down the line. You're looking to select for your Sharks Women Open squad. What fundamentals are you going to look for that are going to be important to you this year?
Great question. I think so. Sort of, if I'm able to, let's assume that I'm able to watch them over the course of the SETA Club Champs and sort of see them play in different games in different scenarios. I want them to be able to pass off both hands accurately over a range of distances. I want them to be able to roll the ball with both hands in varying scenarios in terms of driving up the pitch, line attack, and then also in terms of different pressure from defence. So if someone's coming in really hot to try and smash you, or if someone's just trying to flick and get out of the touch, how do you adjust how you roll the ball in those situations? Defensively, I think sort of good positioning across the park and sort of being able to read the game and understand what's about to happen so that they're in the best position defensively to prepare for that. And then I think it's an interesting one about sort of, can you see someone's attitude around? You can to an extent, but without actually sort of having a conversation with them or a coach or someone that plays with them. But what I really want is someone who's going to ask questions and have like a real like thirst to learn. Like they don't think they're the finished article. They think that they've got progress to make. And I mean, we talk about self-awareness quite a lot in terms of knowing what their strengths are, knowing what their areas to improve are. And I mean, a player with self-awareness is absolute gold dust because they're going to be self-aware of their own skills and what they need to work on, but also have a broader awareness of the other people in the team, what their strengths are, and how they can sort of use those other people to execute what they want. So I think I'm asking a lot, to be honest.
I was just thinking, I'm structuring club sessions. Like, oh my goodness, I need to. Mate, we got training 3 times a week now.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I think also with that, it's, I guess, seeing the potential for that as well. I'm not expecting everyone who we select for the Sharks Women's Open to be that player, because that is sort of the complete player. That's the ultimate player. They would probably be standing there going, I want to improve, but I don't actually have anything to improve on. So I think there's sort of, I'm not going to be too fussy about, well, I've got these ideas in my head, but I also am very aware that it's also about their potential in the game and their potential to learn those skills and improve those skills, not necessarily like they just have to be 10 out of 10 at every skill.
Yeah, for sure. And Logan, same question for you, mate. Taipans Men's Open squad going for glory this year. What are you looking for fundamentals wise from your players?
Winners.
That's
probably another one. No,
that's my answer too.
No, for me, I don't think it's going to differ too much from Will in terms of skill sets. I don't think that varies too much. I think just taking that skill set into context, for me, it's understanding the skill sets of your team and then identifying, okay, what can we do with it? And I think, for example, if I know that I don't have any players for quickies, I'm not going to use that as an excuse for not selecting particular people as well. So I think you've got to be very clear in the expectations up front on what you're looking for. I know there's someone that was in the 35s team on this call, but for me, I was quite upfront in terms of, this is the sort of, I think, how we can, try to get a medal at the World Cup. And that was the structure that I knew by looking at the other teams, probably the way we had to do it. So I had to select players in that type of system. But yeah, I think for me, you've got to, I'm going to expect at certain levels that, yes, can they rock the ball? Can they roll the ball? Can they pass? You are expecting that sort of level, like Will said. But for me, it's people being able and working with people to identify where are they now, and where do they need to get to as well. So if they are stagnant, what will actually get them to become higher, so it doesn't impact what their selection later on as well. And it may not just be skill sets like what Will has touched on. For me, it's okay, I need you to become a leader a senior leading player. Now, I need you to bring your, what value add can you bring to this team as well, rather than, I'll just turn up and I'll just try and score heaps of scores. Yes, we'll look at you, but where does that fit into the whole team? We got to remember as well, a whole team is your full squad. It's not just the players that are on the field at that particular time. So that to me is some of the critical things that I would probably add to what Will was saying.
I think it's an interesting one as well that I'd kind of like to get your opinion on a little bit, Jason. There's sort of two things here. One is, I guess, this year being such a different year, is that there's a bit of an idea, at least in my head, that when we're getting players to a regional squad and then hopefully into an international squad, that all of that, the majority of that skill work has been done, and that actually we're just working on playing together as a team in a different system and developing some of the sort of higher level stuff. And I know it's sort of something that I guess I've heard Eddie Jones talk about before, is that actually he doesn't really coach rugby. He just gets them into a game plan and a system of how they want to play the game. He doesn't do that much time with skills. Whereas I guess this year is potentially going to be a bit different in that we might have to spend more time on skills, just because like actually coaching the technical parts of it, not just practicing them, because people have spent so long out of the game.
Yep.
So I wonder what your thoughts are on that. And then the other point I was just going to raise is something that I've been sort of thinking about a little bit, which is maybe a little bit further down the line for touch in general, but sort of selecting people on almost like having like a super skill or a super strength, and sort of going, you should all be able to do these things to this level, but what's the next thing that you bring to the team that is your standout point of difference? And that could be you're absolutely electric on a sweeper, you're great on a dive, or it could be like you said there, like some of the off-field stuff, like actually you're a really good leader, you get people going, you're a motivator, you drive standards, whatever it is. So I wonder if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I'll start with the skill set. I'll probably use the word rusty. Everyone's going to be rusty. So I think for me, I think if we're going to make sure we need to enhance the skills and get the skills back up to a certain level, we need to make sure it's fun as well. And we're not just going through the robotic things that, we would do when we've been playing touch a fair bit. So, I think there's, I know social touch has started again this week. I'll call it social, but people are just doing that because people have probably got a different purpose for coming to touch at the moment, and it's not to get my passing up to speed over the next 2 weeks. It's just to get a bit of socializing on that as well. So I think as a coach we need to be patient and realize that the skills are not going to be up to scratch, but at the higher level of it, I would be expecting people wanting to do what they call the extras, doing that outside the time as well, just to get up to speed, going, what, I've got the zone in to win this again. I want to be competitive again. Yeah, let's just go and do those extra beats and start trying that. So I think that's where we need to go, but we need to keep it fun. Otherwise people are just going to be bored. And that's
the fun and fundamentals, right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh no,
good. I'm sure there's a trademark on that one. And the other one, the super strength thing, I think that's right. I think once again, this is just about setting the scene at the start, going, I'm expecting all players to be able to do A, B, and C. If we can't do A, B, and C, well, let's get onto it and make sure we can do A, B, and C as a team as well. Because if you've got 8 people that know how to defend short side, but you've got 6 that can't, what's going to happen to your team? So it's still going to be like that. So you, as a coach, you probably need to identify, and I'll go back to that priority 6-10 kind of concept, is that if you know this is the set standard where we want to be at this point of the process, this point of the campaign, and then this is where we want to be moving into the tournament, that's a good way to do it as well. And I think this is where, once again, if you watch that NTL's final, I reckon I can count, there was probably 5 or 6 people that were only involved in attack for the winning team through the whole tournament. So so you can have that super strength of people that can do that 4-on-3 left to right. You can have that electric sweepers and things like that. So for me, it's then calling that out and making sure people are aware of those super strengths, as you call it, Will, that they know, okay, they've got this super strength. What's my role when I'm working with that super strength? So it's evolution, isn't it, throughout that?
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I was just going to say, it's an interesting point about sort of people only playing attack and then other people only playing defense and playing roles. Because I think ultimately, for my approach to that changes depending on the level that I'm coaching at.
Yes, correct.
So I think for our club stuff, I want everyone to be able to do everything and
Correct.
fit in. And there's no sort of I just do attack because that's my super strength. Because actually at a club level, we want it to be way more sort of, not necessarily participation, but we want everyone to be able to do everything so that our club is sustainable and has longevity. Yep. But then I think getting to a regional and international level, it's so important that you give people a role and a clear sort of, this is what I want you to do, because they can really hone those skills then and perform that to the best of their ability, rather than everyone trying to do everything. And then you sort of, like you said, you get 6 people who can't defend the short side defending the short side. You're like, well,
yeah,
not great.
And this is for me, and this is where the one-to-one or the senior leaders talking to your players to understand what do they want to achieve in the game of touch as well. So, if they want to be on there and they want to be the superstar player, well, then you can go through, okay, you need to be able to do this. Then all of a sudden the list might be too massive. They go, yeah, okay, let's just bring that down a little bit as well. So, so it's identifying what people want to do, and then obviously giving them the opportunities to learn. And that's probably what you're saying there, Will, is you don't know until you know, do you? And you need to give people opportunities. Once again, have fun, having that unstructured, put them in different roles during training, just to test it out. But once again, phase that through your campaign so you know exactly when the key decisions that need to be made.
No, that's brilliant. And I'm going to jump back and just highlight, for anyone who hasn't seen the Priority 6, I've just shared it in the chat. So if you want to jump onto the chat, you can download them so you can have them to use at your club. So those will really help with the fundamentals. But no, I think the one thing I've taken from that is it's just really clear, having real clear communications between your coach and your players. Is that fair to say? And that will change at your club level. It's everyone having an opportunity to kind of learn, develop, have fun, find their strength, and then almost you can kind of mold and shape their learning experience as a coach, right? Into well, actually, yeah. Sorry, go on, Logan.
So I was just going to say, people's reasons for coming back to touch could vary these days as well. So let's not forget the last 12 months has been quite mentally draining on a lot of people for one reason or another as well. So, someone that was quite sociable 12 months ago may have had a bit of a tough 12 months. So, their personalities could slightly change and things like that. So, it's going to be quite an interesting one coming back as well. So, just take all those things into consideration.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Conscious of time, because we're keen to keep this within an hour, I'm going to ask you both one more question, and then we'll open the floor to some Q&A and if anyone's got any questions. But we'll come to you first. How would you define a successful team?
It's a $1 million question, really, isn't it? I think ultimately it probably comes down to does the team achieve the goals that they've set out at the start? And so that will vary team to team, club to club. And I think it's really important to set goals that are things you can directly influence and that have no outside influence on them. So I think it's great to be okay, Sharks Women's Open and then playing in Sharks Men's Open, we want to win nationals. That's a great goal, because you should always be striving to be the best and succeed and sort of have success in that way. Yeah. But then I guess,
can you control that?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that we as a team don't have the control over. So I think then sort of going, okay, if our team goal is to play a really exciting brand of touch and a really free-flowing brand of touch, being able to then sort of assess against that and go, did we actually play that style, or actually did we just go back to sort of standard, basic, whatever you want to call it, or vice versa? If we said we were just going to play this style of touch, did we play it? And And then I think sort of interestingly, you can sort of quantify those kind of things and go, did we complete X number of sets? Did we do this? But I guess it's all about, for me, at a higher level, definitely is giving yourself the best chance to win. And if we took care of everything that we could take care of to give ourselves that opportunity, then that's kind of success, even if results aren't sort of what you want them to be.
Nice. Sure, it is $1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tough, really tough.
Logan, come to you. How would you define success in your team?
For me, I think it's quite simple, and I think it's all got to be measurable. And maybe I'm just telling you what my personality is straight away, aren't I? but for me, it's where did we start? Where did we end up? And was that, do we achieve the goals that we wanted to do during that full period? So, I mean, that is, quite obvious in terms of, success from there for me, but it's also external reputation and external image of your team as well. So for me, if you get a team that is getting bad press or negative vibes and things like that around as well, for me, that can be just unsuccessful as well. So like what Will's probably touched on, you can be very successful in terms of results, but you could be a real bastard and, and get into those disagreements and have no sort of team harmony as well. But I mean, that's, that is, and I'll go back again to the winning team at the NTLs this year. They did have a lot of friction last year, and they actually split up first, and then they've only come together this year. So obviously there was some things that had to happen behind the scenes to help out with that, and the coach sort of got some other people involved to sort of mend that. So for me, I think it's having those measurable things, but it is some of that sort of subjective stuff as well, and it's just about, are you actually proud when you walk off that field as a team?
Yeah,
a little bit like be the team that everyone wants to be in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice, solid. Jed, that's I've absolutely loved listening to that. Thank you so much. I'm going to open it up to the floor. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to come off mute, shout them out. If there's a conflict, we'll have a nice quick laugh and we'll find out who's going to go first. But feel free to come off mute if you've got any questions for Will or Logan. It's the classic.
I'll quickly shout something out. That's been really interesting. I guess you both kind of have mainly a touch from quite in England, fairly experienced players usually that you're working with to a certain degree, whereas so at Surrey Bisons, we've got a real mix of, we basically on a normal night we'll have a completely social pitch, which is literally just complete pitch up and play, never played any touch the floor kind of thing. And then we have a competitive pitch, which are people who kind of want to do competitions and stuff. What we've found is there's getting more and more distance between the two pitches. And there's some players on those social pitches who have really good core skills. And sometimes they're interested in coming onto the competitive pitch, but because, it can be quite a big step up and it can be quite intimidating if their personality is not towards that. Have you got any advice or approaches that you would do in those environments?
Yeah, I'll go for this one. So I think I sort of at uni had some experience trying to sort of facilitate a uni touch club with a sort of similar situation to what you're saying, a sort of balance of people who had experience and people that didn't. I think, I guess in terms of facilitating people to make the step up, I guess it's, if you've got regulars that are coming down to the social pitch and you know who they are, could you start your session by introducing a little bit more touch specific stuff in terms of, even if it's just sort of like, oh, this is what we call this, or this is what we try and do in this area of the pitch. And I guess to an extent, you could look at that sort of intentions and actions framework and sort of just go, we know you're here to have fun and you don't want to necessarily play a super structured game, but we would be interested in bringing you up to that more competitive pitch. And we think you've got a lot of potential. Have you thought about the game any more than just when you rock up and play, if that makes sense? And I think it's an interesting one that I found was actually sending people clips of high level touch being played and sort of going, oh, just like have a watch of this, here are some highlights, or here's a game that I played in, here's a game that a friend of mine played in, etc. and sort of getting them to see almost what good looks like, and then putting that idea in their head that they could get to that point, and sort of be like, look, this is, you've got, you're athletic, you're skillful, you're like, you could be really good at this game. This is what it could look like at the top level. Like, do you want it? Do you want to get there? And if they do, then you can kind of try and bring them along on that journey, I guess. Does that help or answer your question?
Yeah, it does. That's great.
Yeah.
And it's something we've spoken about on the, like, I would love to have it as each session starts as a club warm up with everyone doing drills that are kind of core skill based, and then you can go off and do whatever. But unfortunately, we're not quite there yet, but it is the end goal.
I was going to jump in with that as well and just say, I think for a lot of it, a lot of people have probably, if they have an experience, say in rugby before, if you joined a rugby club, giving them an opportunity to have success. Because I imagine, and I had it before when I first started playing, you turn up and you're like, what's this game touch? And you just get chucked in and people just shout lingo at you and you're like, I have no idea what's going on. I look stupid. I feel stupid. What is this? Whereas actually, if you do something like exactly like you said, Will, skills-based, fun, like make it fun, give everyone, regardless of touch experience, an opportunity to succeed and win. And then you can steadily move your session more towards your specific outcome, I guess. Is that fair to say as well? Just making sure. Yeah. And maybe that could be your opportunity for a whole club thing. And it can be like longest fast competition, or not even that, like dive, I don't know. Just trying to do something which is fun and inclusive for everyone to have an opportunity to win at.
I think also it's an interesting opportunity for development of your more experienced players. If you say to them, oh, you need to actually explain this to someone in really like clear layman's terms, rather than being like, oh yeah, run a 32 rooster. You need to go, okay, you're going to move over there. Yeah. This defender's going to come and initiate the touch on you. This is the running line. And it'll help your more experienced players broaden their knowledge and their learning, because they'll have to explain it so simply rather than just saying a piece of lingo at someone who knows what that means already.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've done sessions before, which I still see value in this, where you're not allowed to call any touch moves and you can't say anything in touch language. And that's just the rule for the session. And you have to say, go forwards, go to the right, step down, put the ball down, pass to me on the left. And it's amazing how much you have to then think and talk about it. And I still find value in it now when you're training, because you're so used to just going, recently you just shout a word and everyone kind of understands it. But actually that does disservice to people who don't necessarily have that knowledge or that lingo.
Great, thank you.
No, pleasure.
Hi guys, if I can just jump in there. Well, I think one of the key things is, as I think you were saying, really getting the people to understand that they can be good. They might be turning up and thinking, well, we're just social. But if you really show faith that they could develop, then they're going to be much more willing to take on board any advice. I think sometimes we sort of can quite quickly put people into a social box and say they're just here to have a run around, and they're happy and they're having fun. But as soon as somebody shows faith in them that they can improve and get better, then they'll be much more willing to learn. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, that was like a massive thing for me, was where when I was at school, one of like my PE teachers who was sort of involved in touch was like, oh, like you're getting like quite handy at this. Are you enjoying it? And I was like, yeah, it's good fun. And she was like, oh, well, like there's a World Cup in 3 years. Like, I think you could play in it. And I was like, okay, like, cool. I'm going to like, that's a really tangible thing that I can go towards, and sort of then putting that faith in me just sort of inspired me to actually put the work in and like get there.
And then you met really Jason Logan. Skyrocketed. No doubt. Great point. Absolutely spot on. Completely agree. Any more questions from the floor?
Oh, here's one on the chat. With a recognition of the need for grassroots touch, both in region and across the world, can we make touch relevant for young people?
Andy Pennicard, I'm 100% going to call on you to come off mute for this one, mate.
Yeah.
There we go.
Welcome.
Can we make touch relevant for young people? Absolutely. It's been one of my big drivers since I was first introduced to touch, only about 5 years ago now. But I couldn't believe that it wasn't played in every school by every kid. up and down the country. I didn't see the sense in it. So I think for me, from launching my little club in London and watching kids come from all different backgrounds and all different things, and they turn up on a Friday and they all play together, they have a great time, and they're all different ages. It's just a testament to the game, really. How can we make it more relevant for young people? I just think exposure to the game. We just have to get more kids having a go, and that's everything from trial days to whatever you do with the adults. You can definitely do, and is very relevant to the children. I think a great capture point, and this is something that I've just been thinking about recently, is we have in rugby terms, there's a huge drop off of children from the age of 9 when they start doing contact and they start going through. And I think one of the fundamental problems with touch in the UK at the moment is we start too late. I think under 15 is far too late to be advertising, because children have already made their mind up. They're already into contact, or if they've stopped contact, they've started football. And the same with the girls, because the girls can't play with the boys anymore from 9 and 10 years old. The girls go off and do another sport, and then they're stuck in their sport. So I think fundamentally from a UK junior growth perspective, we need to be much more focused on the 8, 9, 10-year-olds and capture them at that age. That's fundamentally where I think we need to be as an organisation, as SETA and as England Touch.
Yeah, completely agree. I think there's almost like what's not to like about touch as a sport, especially if you come from a rugby background or a netball background or a hockey background. There's so much of those sports intertwined in the game. And I mean, again, I like go back to the point of sort of like sending around video and stuff like that. I think it's so great that there's more and more resources of international matches, NTL's games, state cup games, etc., on YouTube, and actually exposing kids and people who are new to the game to that video and sort of go, this is what it looks like at the top level. Like, do you reckon you could get there? Because I think you could. There's nothing really stopping you, especially like for a kid who's still learning a lot of those movement skills and motor patterns and stuff like that. There's absolutely nothing stopping them being the best player in England at like a given time.
Yeah, I think another massive sell for us in the UK at the moment is because it's still small. So that when children actually look at it as a chance of getting in and getting selected and actually achieving, that the opportunity is really there. The competition isn't at the moment, but so from that perspective, there's a massive opportunity at the moment for juniors.
Solid. Yeah. Hopefully that answered your question, Ollie.
Happy to talk more, Ollie. If you want to message me, we can chat more about that if you like.
Yeah, so Andy's services. If anyone is looking to set up any junior touch, Andy Pennicard's email will be circulated after this, and his consulting rate is phenomenal. Nice. He's obviously going to do it for free. Solid. Any more questions? Easy. Silence. Cool. Well, I think if that's it for everyone, I just want to say massive thank you for giving up your time. Will, Logan, Andy as well. Thank you so much for just sharing so honestly. I'm sure you wouldn't mind me saying that you'd be happy to be contacted if anyone does have any questions. Mikey, I'll search for priority 10, not 6, mate. Absolutely love the call out. Send some messages. So if we get any coaching resources that will help with sort of what to do when you're coming back to your club, touch specific, non-touch specific, we'll circulate anything that we can get our hands on. But otherwise, any questions in the meantime, feel free to get in touch with any of us. And just a massive thanks again, Will, Logan, you guys were awesome. Cheers.
Thanks for having us. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, really good.
Thanks.
See you. Bye.
Enjoy your evenings, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
See you.
See you.